These golden pupils are actually a low-level skill sold at a high price in the store. NPCs laugh at him, calling him a newbie, but little do they know the true power of Monkey's vision. In his previous life, Sun Wukong repeatedly reminded him that he must buy this skill during the first stage. After some measurement, once certain conditions are met, it can evolve into the fiery eyes. Just a few minutes left until the end of the world, yet he found himself alone in the bustling city. He opened his suitcase in the street, and to his surprise it was filled with large machetes. The little Kurami next to him was scared out of his wits. He just cursed him once. "Are you really going to chop people with an axe?" Facing Kurami's shouting, Jin Yuyuan showed no reaction. He simply waited quietly for 12 o'clock to arrive. As the clock ticked away, the entire city seemed to have fallen into hell. A mysterious voice erupted in the air. "The tutorial match begins. Please survive in the zombie horde." Jin Yuyuan remained completely calm. He had already experienced this situation once before. In the past he just wanted to survive. But now he carried a mission. As the zombie nests appeared, everyone suddenly found random weapons in their hands. Jin Yuyuan also pulled out a secret weapon from his pocket. While others struggled to kill a single zombie, Jin Yuyuan moved like a hungry wolf among the zombies, swiftly dodging. The system panel kept popping up upgrade notifications. It turned out that in his previous life, he learned from an old man that salt could increase damage to zombies. Jin Yuyuan suddenly became absent-minded for a moment. In his previous life, he had reached the upper realms through endless efforts. He was the only human among the gods. Sun Wukong and Asura were his friends. But then came the alien invaders. The Eastern and Western pantheons united to resist the enemy. But in the end they failed. The only way was through the god of time, sacrificing oneself to alter fate. However, this ability could only send one person back to the starting point. Everyone agreed to give this chance to Jin Yuyuan. After all, he had climbed the tower once before. Climbing it again should be a piece of cake. Maybe then he could change the current outcome. At this moment the tutorial match still had 10 minutes left. Although in just 20 minutes, he had already killed countless zombies. To level up faster, he thought of a clever move. Suddenly snow began to fall from the sky. The zombies that were still moving earlier suddenly collapsed to the ground. Looking up, a dark figure was constantly moving through the sky. It was Jin Yuyuan. He sprinkled all the salt powder from his backpack. When the first tutorial match ended, only 4,077 survivors remained. But in just the first round, Jin Yuyuan had earned 1427 points. He vaguely remembered that in his previous life he only had 3 points. As the saying goes, golden pills are scattered everywhere. And Yuan Ying is no better than a dog. Points accumulate quickly. Becoming a god is what truly matters. Now with the achievement rewards, he had already reached an impressive 3,027 points. But with that came the second round of the tutorial match. At this moment a safe yellow zone was marked in the city center. At the same time, new monsters emerged from underground outside the zone. It continued to tear apart the remaining humans. For most people this was a nightmare. But for Jin Yuyuan, these were just perfect experience boosters. He slashed at the monsters while heading towards the location in his memory. Others were just trying to survive. But he needed to level up quickly. As he ventured deeper into the map, Jin Yuyuan reached the monster respawn point. He discovered a hidden dungeon. Without hesitation, Jin Yuyuan began the battle, moving gracefully through the monsters. His movements were swift and seamless. At that moment he transformed into a heartless killer, ruthlessly slaughtering the monsters. Little did he know a crystal core suddenly dropped. It's important to note that this was a necessary item in later stages. No time to think about it. The motivation to slay monsters was now fully ignited. Moments later, the enormous subway station was almost completely filled with monster corpses. Jin Yuan's backpack was also filled with rewards. At this point his level had reached an astonishing level 20. Then he accessed the system's NPC. With the kitchen knife in hand, killing the boss was almost impossible. So he needed to upgrade his equipment in advance. Among the dazzling array of items, Jin Yuyuan only chose a basic magic sword and some monkey wood. That seemed to be useless, because his current kill data was too overpowered. He had also become a special target for surveillance, so he had to proceed cautiously. If his identity as a time traveler was discovered, it would be catastrophic. However, NPCs in the early stages shouldn't be able to notice. After all, the clock of return was crafted by the god of time's painstaking effort. Let alone ordinary NPCs, even the so-called administrators, shouldn't be able to find any trace of time travel. At this moment there were only 30 minutes left in the tutorial match. Jin Yuyuan finally found the ultimate boss here, Chu Mu. When the monster saw Jin Yuyuan, it instantly went into a rage. Ignoring the nearby ants, it charged straight at him. Jin Yuyuan instantly appeared beside the monster. He moved like a sprinting athlete, repeatedly jumping sideways. Countless wounds appeared on the monster's body. For a giant monster like this, its greatest fear was speed. Jin Yuan's attacks were like birds on an alligator's head. The monster knew they were there but couldn't fight back. But to the monster, these injuries were insignificant. Though uncomfortable, they didn't cause real harm. Then Jin Yuan made a small jump, landing right in front of the monster. The monster opened its massive jaws trying to swallow him whole. Hey, let me help you rinse your mouth. Jin Yuan immediately used the Noxian guillotine. The giant Chu Mu was actually cut in half. The battle was over. Jin Yuan bandaged his wounds. At this point the NPC appeared again. This man was actually able to solo the boss in the second stage. He's basically a human bug. He's essentially a human bug. Jin Yuan couldn't be bothered to argue with him. He got straight to the point and asked for the reward for passing the stage. The NPC helpless could only present 3 options. The first option was to directly skip to the 5th stage, with the rewards from stages 3 and 4 given immediately. The second option was to receive 10,000 points. The final option was to connect to Olympus. Upon hearing this, Jin Yuan fell into thought. The NPC explained that the tutorial match was just the beginning. As long as he connected to Olympus, he could gain their support. Although Jin Yuan knew, with the backing of these gods he would have no fear. He was disgusted by the actions of some of the gods. He felt disgusted. Without thinking much he made his decision. Points reward. The NPC was visibly nervous upon hearing the choice. He couldn't believe anyone would refuse Olympus temptation. Jin Yuan noticed something from the conversation. He directly summoned the system. For a cost of 1,000 points. He exchanged it for a meeting with the administrator. The tutorial match and Olympus belonged to 2 different departments. Little did he know the NPC here was actually running a business to recruit people. Jin Yuan couldn't allow such disgusting dealings. In the next moment a burst of light appeared. The administrator appeared in front of Jin Yuan. He was like a giant. He had already heard of Jin Yuan's kill record. The nearby NPCs were already terrified. Jin Yuan revealed everything about Olympus just now. Before the fool could rebut, the administrator punched and killed him. He didn't expect his subordinates to be secretly involved in such dealings. The administrator kindly patted Jin Yuan on the shoulder. He calculated what kind of reward to give him. As their palms touched, Jin Yuan obtained a magic controller skill. The effect was an enhancement to magical ability attributes. The administrator didn't stay long. He left with a smile like first love. But Jin Yuan felt as if he had been frozen in place. You must know, this skill is extremely overpowered. It's like having a permanent blue buff. And it turned him from a warrior into a dual-class character with magic. But he must not become arrogant or complacent. Right now his resources are still too limited. While there's still time he needs to push hard and level up. Jin Yuan didn't think much about it. He rushed back into the worm monster horde. With the end of the second tutorial match, he had reached the terrifying level 26. But just then, the crowd began to stir again. The third tutorial match began. Please collect 50 crystal cores within the area. Jin Yuan walked alone to a corner. He emptied his items from his backpack. Crystal cores, huh? I have a total of 132 of them. Looking at the magic sphere in his hand, and the large monster horde downstairs. 100 is not enough. Let's just challenge 1,000. At that moment, upon seeing the illuminated convenience store lights, everyone felt a sense of hope. But what they didn't notice was, the giant monsters had already hidden behind them. In an instant they were devoured by spiders. The group finally saw the hidden enemies. But the 2 were trembling all over. They had no fighting ability left. They could only mechanically swing their weapons. The giant rat in front of them immediately bit into the woman's arm. The man also couldn't hold on under the zombie siege. In the next moment the monsters on both sides exploded. Jin Yuan slowly walked out from the shadows. He was only holding a soda can. The woman widened her eyes. The monster that she couldn't defeat no matter how hard she tried. This man actually killed it with just a soda can. Before the woman could continue thinking, Jin Yuan still holding his knife approached. In just an instant, the monsters that had gathered earlier were all eliminated. With his mission in mind, Jin Yuan didn't want to be entangled with these people. He dropped some healing medicine and turned to leave. The woman kindly reminded him. There are many monsters underground, it's extremely dangerous. She probably doesn't know the strength of the man in front of her. For her, this is a hell on earth, a monster's paradise. But for Jin Yuan, this is nothing more than a restaurant and a lounge. The 2 had nowhere to go. It could only follow the mysterious man ahead. Jin Yuan couldn't help but wonder. Why not stay on the ground if you're this weak? The woman tearfully explained. Because on the ground you not only have to worry about monsters, but humans are even more terrifying. With 50 crystal cores needed to survive, people are killing each other. Jin Yuan smiled lightly. Aren't you afraid I'll take your crystal cores? But seeing the 2 of them now, he started to think differently. After all, Jin Yuan had been fighting monsters tirelessly these past few days. As a result, the monsters now flee whenever they smell his presence. So now the 2 of them are just his monster farming machines. Each one is constantly drawing in large groups of monsters. Jin Yuyuan just waits in place. And a majority of the experience boosters come to him. The speed of leveling has increased considerably compared to before. For their efforts, Jin Yuyuan generously gave each of them 50 crystal cores. Now the tutorial match was about to end. It was time to head to the surface. On the surface everyone was facing off. Compared to fighting monsters, they were more eager to get crystal cores from each other. But Jin Yuyuan was just holding a cardboard box to himself. Then he gathered all the crystal cores from his backpack into the box. Things that others were fighting for seemed to be just regular supplies for Jin Yuyuan. Jin Yuyuan priced them at 100 points per crystal. Clearance sale. The crowd immediately started to stir. The leader, a little blonde, even took out a knife and threatened him. He may not be a match for him, but with so many people the odds are in their favor. Everyone was ready to fight. But when everyone rushed to Jin Yuyuan, they immediately regretted it. The approaching Kurami was instantly sliced in half. But now it was already a lost cause. The group quickly began their second charge. But they still didn't understand the gap in power. Jin Yuyuan made a dragon with his left hand, and a rainbow with his right. In the middle he summoned a Monkey King. In the blink of an eye the battle was over. The little blonde leader finally thought about running away. But Jin Yuyuan wouldn't give him any chance. When the person moves, the sword moves. The little blonde leader was completely done with this world. The remaining group immediately became obedient. They all raised their hands to buy with points. Jin Yuan's points skyrocketed like a terrifying line. By this stage his points had reached 160,000. Before the reset time, Sun Wukong told Jin Yuyuan, proficiency, 000% to evolve the low-level monkey's eye skill. He must fail the third tutorial match, because the destruction boss at that time can grant the monkey's eye the will of the fiery eyes. So Jin Yuyuan forced himself to fail the tutorial match and quietly waited for the destruction to come. He waited silently for the end. A Buddha relies on golden robes. The first step is to improve his equipment. He repeatedly selected items in the points shop, and eventually settled on 4 pieces of equipment. They were the Chilling Ice Jade Iron Sword, the Fire Curse Robe for increased fire resistance, the Anti-Magic Shield to resist magic attacks, and the consumable item Ice Crystal. Even the administrator couldn't help but marvel. These items are like using level 30 equipment to fight level 3 monsters. But the enemies in this destruction stage are not so simple. It's not that simple. As the countdown began, the sky turned blood red. The ground began to collapse. It emitted a scorching heat. For a moment the entire city seemed to become a sea of fire. Countless fiery skeletons emerged from the ground. Jin Yuyuan equipped all his gear and prepared for the challenge. But these were just small monsters. The boss still hadn't appeared. The face of the boss gradually appeared. The low-level demon Surtur has emerged. Jin Yuyuan however just smiled lightly. He had already seen him during the Twilight of the Gods. Back then Surtur's size was like mountains. But now because gods from the upper realms have come to the lower realm, his power is suppressed by the world's rules. He is now only the size of a house. Jin Yuyuan, standing in the city, seemed to have been waiting for a long time. When Surtur saw those golden eyes, he vaguely remembered that stinky monkey from Flower Fruit Mountain. It also had the same eyes. Surtur drew a giant sword made of fire from his waist, signaling that the battle was about to begin. Jin Yuyuan took the initiative, charging into the monster horde. Although these skeletons had average combat power, they would explode massively when they were destroyed. This made the battle more complicated. Seeing Jin Yuyuan with minimal damage, Surtur smiled lightly. He noticed the weapons chosen seemed to be tailored to counter him. The Fire Curse Robe resists heat. The Anti-Magic Shield deflects magic. Jin Yuyuan smiled as well. The equipment I bought wasn't to counter you. It's to hunt you. Surtur showed a mocking expression. A mere human dares to challenge a god? It's probably a problem just to get close. Jin Yuyuan couldn't be bothered with his taunts. With a leap he was already above the skeletons. To avoid damage, he needed to quickly deal with these monsters. With a flurry of sword strikes, explosions rang out throughout the city. After hours of fighting, his armor was on the verge of breaking. But these minions kept summoning more. Jin Yuyuan knew that if this continued, he would be exhausted to death. He loudly taunted Surtur on the high platform. The next moment an immense force came toward him. As a god I wouldn't bother with you humans. But now you've earned the right. Jin Yuyuan seemed impatient. I already told you before. I came specifically to kill you. Surtur didn't get angry but smiled instead. He intended to show Jin Yuyuan the gap between them. Jin Yuyuan had already accumulated tons of fiery energy within him. Success or failure depended on this moment. In the next moment Surtur's giant sword came crashing down. The anti-magic shield shattered under the attack. The earth began to lie Kai. Jin Yuyuan desperately resisted the overwhelming blow. Unfortunately the difference in power was still too great. Jin Yuyuan was directly struck into the rubble. The entire city fell into a dead silence in an instant. However, this left Surtur puzzled. This man didn't even try to dodge just now. It seemed like he was specifically waiting to take my giant sword. But just then, the ruins suddenly began to shake. Then flames just like his own erupted. Jin Yuyuan wasn't defeated. Instead, he stood up as if reborn from the flames. Upon closer inspection, those eyes seemed to have changed. Ding! Hidden conditions met. The monkey's eye has changed. You have obtained the fiery eyes. Jin Yuyuan smiled lightly. This signified that the real battle was just beginning. He drew the ice jade iron sword. He took the ice crystal and swallowed it. Now with the evolution of the fiery eyes, his attributes were greatly enhanced. Not only was his fire resistance increased, but his combat perception also became extremely sharp. He now had the capability to face Surtur head-on. He had the strength for a direct confrontation. Red and blue flames spread recklessly throughout the city. Jin Yuyuan leapt and arrived in front of Surtur. With the advantage in speed, he struck with full force. Surtur had to admit that the cold aura of the ice jade iron sword caused him significant damage. He also put aside his arrogance. Surtur summoned 2 spheres of purple flames. The terrifying energy seemed to tear through space. Jin Yuyuan knew that if he was hit by this attack, he would be obliterated on the spot. He hastily activated the fiery eyes and initiated battle prediction. In an instant, the trajectory of the purple fire attack was easily tracked. Then Surtur launched the purple fire energy. A terrifying explosion rang out in an instant. Although Jin Yuyuan avoided the central damage, but the heat from the scorched earth seemed almost impossible for him to resist. He had to swallow another ice crystal, but he also ended up in a state of frostbite. Now he had to end the battle quickly. Otherwise he might freeze to death before the fire kills him. He kept dodging Surtur's attacks. While thinking of a counterattack opportunity, he still had a powerful trump card left. That was the magic power he obtained from the administrator earlier. Let's begin. Surtur's large size made him slow to move. The magic wave hit his head solidly. It caused the monster to fall into a brief state of frostbite. Jin Yuyuan seized this fleeting opportunity. With a small leap, he landed in front of him. He took the chance to get to Surtur's neck. For a moment, Jin Yuyuan was like an ant in the body of an elephant. Helpless yet unavoidable, but the flames on Surtur's body had already caused him severe burns. He knew that he might not succeed, but he had to give it his all. Jin Yuyuan drew the ice jade iron sword. He finally found a comfortable stance to stand in. Surtur immediately sensed something was wrong. But the next moment, Jin Yuyuan had already infused all his magic into the sword. He plunged it into a fatal spot. The flames on Surtur's body finally extinguished. The ice jade iron sword in Jin Yuyuan's hand also disappeared. You have defeated the destruction boss in the tutorial. Jin Yuyuan recalled all his companions from his past life. This was just the beginning. An unbelievable achievement had been reached. He dragged his broken body forward. The intermediate stage of the fiery eyes was already this strong. He walked slowly to the monster's corpse. Most demons have accessories. Jin Yuyuan widened his eyes to obtain the giant's heart effect, which contains the power of the giants.